Okay, so you started in 42, did several trips for Neville's along the way before he was killed.
Yep.
Then did several trips with your dad, the Disney trip, the Up Run, and then you've kind of boated steadily along since 42. Your last trip was just a couple of years ago. That was a private trip that you did down here.
Well, that's pretty close to it, Lou. After that last trip with my dad and the Kiwi group, then I didn't run again until about 88. So that's about 25, 26 years. And there were several reasons for that. One of them, I got pretty interested in politics. And I went back to Washington and spent some time not gainfully employed, but as some of my friends said, you weren't gainfully employed, but you did work for the government.
What work did you do?
Oh, I was chairman of the Federal Home Loan Mortgage Corporation, which is a semi-government owned organization. So it was just terrific. Actually, I was able to continue to kayak because we'd go down to Virginia, West Virginia, Georgia, some of the places there. But I got away from this kind of boating. The other thing was, and I was incorrect, is I was concerned that the canyon would have changed so much that I would be disappointed in it. And finally, when I did take this trip in 88, I found, to my chagrin and surprise, that you guys have done a terrific job. I mean, I tell people that I don't know who's responsible, but the canyon looks just about the same as it did, except for all the doggone tamarisk, number one. And the paths are just a little bit deeper. You know, you walk up to Nankoweap or back up into one of the Deer Creek Falls. And 15, 20 years ago, if they were used at all then, they were cut deeper by people walking over. The place is pristine. I mean, in general, I would call it pristine. It's just incredible where you have a whole bunch of people come down to the canyon and you don't find bits of tinfoil around. I mean, that's really great stuff.
So it's as clean as it was in the early days when you came down?
It is substantially as clean.
Or cleaner?
Yeah, or cleaner, yeah. But there are a lot of, they didn't get many people. You'd have to blame Harvey Butchert on that.
When you were coming down originally. What did you think when you had the opportunity to come on, when this trip came up? What was your first impression of it, and has that been borne out? How do you feel about this trip now, about getting to go along on this one?
Well, the letter came from Diana, and or from somebody. She did it, and somebody sent it, and my wife and I looked at it and said, "Gee, that ought to be fun. Let's go." And one of the reasons for that is we talk a little business here, but not much. But we talk about things that you guys talk about. And I don't have any engineers as friends. And so it's fun to listen to what they talk about, or the subjects that you talk about that they bring up and have a different slant on them. So we've enjoyed it very much. One of the interesting things is to us so far is the pace. I don't know whether you guys are well organized or not, but it doesn't make any difference. It's just a different way of taking on the river, if you will. And I think one other thing that the modern generation, if you will, you guys, what you have done is excellent, and that is exploring up in the canyons. I can't remember what we went to last time. I've been up and done the what did they call it? The Hidden Valley?
Surprise Valley.
Surprise Valley. I've done that and several other hikes in that area. I think that's terrific that you're doing that. But we were featuring in our thoughts was getting down the river. That's what we were interested in. We were interested in the river, not the other. Now that's a little too far because we did have geologists and biologists who come down with us occasionally. But that was not our primary focus. Well, it's not yours in a way.
Well, I'd say it's 50-50 on a commercial trip. I mean, I'd say fully half the impact of the trip has to do with the site stops.
Yes.
Which we have, you know, on this trip we've actually done less, you know, than a normal trip. Well, so back to the changes, the biggest change that you can see is the tamarisks. What do you think about the beaches? Are they bigger or littler, or how does the corridor look to you compared with 1942 or 56 for that matter?
Well, I don't think it's as open. This is just a guess on my part, but it doesn't seem as open as it had been there. I mean, to me, this is in the cluttered up side, and I'm not used to that. Didn't like that, and I like the big beaches. And that's what happens when we mess around with, you know, Mother Nature. She's going to figure a way of getting even and getting her way again. And I don't know what that will be. Maybe it's a series of fires. I don't know. But we would light a lot of fires, and we of course have one every night. And we would spend a couple hours every night after dinner sitting around shooting the breeze, talking about the day's events. And I wish we could have more fires here. But are they illegal or restricted?
They are. They're legal just in the winter months. In the summer months, we're supposed to cook on gas and not burn any fires.
I see.
But from, I think it might be September 15th or somewhere in there, September 15th or maybe October through April, it's okay. You just have to have a pan for them and throw your ashes.
Yes. Well, that's what I thought that they were doing, but you know, I mean, there's a lot of camaraderie developed around fires, and I'm not the one who has to pick up the fire pan, but still, that's not too expensive.
Well, the beaches themselves, are they smaller, or is it just that there's more vegetation, or can you tell? What do you think about the mission of this trip and the running of the dam and the fate of the corridor over the long haul?
When you say corridor, what do you mean?
Just the river, just this immediate environment that's most directly impacted by the running of the dam, by daily fluctuations, or by the lack of silt.
Yeah.
Caused by Glen Canyon.
Well, you know, silt is part of the whole equation down here, and if the interior or whoever it is will forgive me, I guess, but those guys spend an awful lot of time on scouring out the garbage from the canyon. I mean, hauling the porta potties out. What a great job. What else? The papers and so forth, picking them up, and the restrictions on the fires. If they're really terribly concerned about that kind of thing, they ought to be concerned about other things, such as the big driftwood piles that used to be down here, and more directly on your point, I think that they ought to spend more time on trash hauling, no matter what form that takes. And I don't know what I do here, but the problem here is that it's tough for 10, 15 guys to get around and shoot the breeze together here. I mean, you can go down to the beach, I guess, So I guess my feeling is that the quality of the beach, and I think that's important as well as the quantity, but the quality of the beach is down, in my opinion. Is down.
For posterity, what am I forgetting? What are we forgetting, Jeff, for this? I get the feeling that I get the feeling that we're gonna shut this thing down, and we're gonna go down there, and 10 or 15 minutes later, I'm gonna think, God, why didn't I ask this question or that question? Or, when it comes to archiving this stuff or setting down facts that'll be of value over the long haul,
Well, you can have adjuncts to it, I suppose, can't you?
Yeah, I hope so. I would hope that we can call you up and make another run at it.
Yeah.
But just for right now, is there something, significant observation or experience that you've had that we ought to set down here that you can think of? I mean, maybe we ought to just take like 30 seconds or something and think about what we ought to set down right now.
Yeah. Well, I have one thing. I guess I'm really pleased, and I don't know who's caused it, by the stewardship of the canyon. And I think it's important to have as many people come and enjoy it as possible without ruining that which we're down here to see and enjoy. Now that speaks for fast boats, some fast boats. I mean, you can have fun in a fast boat. I mean, there's 2 docks that we were steering around here for the last few days. I mean, that's a ball sitting on there. You can have one heck of a good time. And I think that that's something that, and it's in your phase of the development of the canyon, that you guys, I believe, ought to push that as far as you possibly can. Again, without raping the landscape. So I guess I'd put it this way, Lou. I'd say, Norm Neville's isn't here. He'll never be back. Dock Marston isn't here, or Willie Taylor, or Buzzy Belknap. Well, Buzzy will be, but Bill Belknap. In other words, Jimmy Jordan. The old timers aren't here anymore, and it's your show now. And so far, it seems to me that you've started in a way that is very encouraging. And I would urge you to, this was very nice, come down, be called a legend, and all that, as long as we recognize that the ball's in your court and you're playing it not against us, with other people. So I commend you for what you've done, and hope the heck you keep it up and do things in a different way as you're beginning to do them now. That's just 30 seconds.
That was great. What a great soundbite. I thought that was perfect. Could you hear that, Jeff? Did you get that? Oh, man. Okay. And we got enough light, you think? Oh, yeah. Good deal.
Yeah, right.
What do you think, Jeff? Are we forgetting anything? What should we add to this?
Have there been, for me, I keep coming back to Willie Taylor, and I told Lew, I'd like you to talk about that, and we have some. For me, that was a real touching thing. You go up there, and everybody was pretty emotional, and you were emotional, and we were there.
Yeah.
Has that been the only time that there's been that kind of an emotional bond with the canyon on this trip that we've done? Has it been an emotional trip, or has it been a sightseeing trip?
Wow. I think it's been more than sightseeing. I think there's been participation. After all, as one of you said this morning, we have all been down through the canyon. Now, for some of us, it's been a long time, too. So everybody here is interested. They wouldn't have come if they weren't really interested in the canyon. And I think you ought to hit us up for money and you know, to finance a well-defined activity, but a well-defined activity. That's what we're supposed to be doing. You guys are supposed to be running around doing all these great things, and we're supposed to sit and watch and send a check. And I think that's what you guys ought to do.
Okay.
Yeah, just don't bother putting a dollar amount. We'll take care of that. And I don't think it's a sightseeing trip. I think that if you do it again, there are ways you can improve it.
What are those?
Well, I think you can organize it a little bit better, but not too much. I tend to be a person who organizes a lot, and I like to do it. But in a group like this may destroy the spirit of the group, because it's a pretty successful group overall. And sometimes just don't try to organize me. Good point, I think. I think I might start out in the day, for example. Start the day out, okay, from a practical standpoint, just to help you with your dressing. We're expecting this today. We're going here, we're going there, etc., etc., etc. And I don't recall that we did that very much, if we did. And I guess that would be my thought. And you might even think about a bibliography for it. My daughters and I and two daughters-in-law went on a safari this year in Africa, and we, between us, the three of us, four of us, five of us, we must have read 30 or 40 books. I mean, we were just interested in it, and I'll bet you could sell that kind of thing the way Belknap sells his kind of stuff. You can sell it by saying, here's your great opportunity to pick up on all the things you've missed all these years. I mean, you could talk with Lois Jotter. Here's an intelligent woman. And my guess is that she has not read very much on the Grand Canyon. I mean, it was a great experience, and now she's out. But you know, if you'd said to her, okay, you haven't been around the canyon for X number of years, here's a list of 5 books that we recommend that you read. And I saw some here, including the one you gave me. I've seen some here that I'll read. Well, that's what you want.
Sounds good.
And I guess the last thing is that unsolicited advice is odious. So I'm not likely to give many pieces of advice unless you ask me.
Well, this is solicited. I mean, truly, these comments are really.
That what?
What you've just said, but all that stuff is really good. I think we do well to pay attention to that.
Well, all right, and if you want to, before we go, let me know, and I'll go over some stuff with you. And if you have some other questions.
Well, let's go over it right now. I mean, as far as whatever whatever, unless you're getting bored, unless you want to get shook out of here.
No, that's all I can have is a soft beer.
No, let's, as far as recording it, are we okay?
We're at 1.8. We've got about 15 minutes
Before it's too dark. Well, just in terms of advice and stuff, just for us to have a record of it, don't hold back. I mean, we might as well record it while we're...
Yeah. I don't have many things. I think one of the things is, if you do something like this, you ought to be very clear in your own mind how you're going to use it. That's really important. That'll help define the questions that you want, and will point to those things that are very, very important, other things that really you don't give much of a darn about. And I
You
think
mean like this, the oral history here, or the whole trip?
yeah, and then you say the answer to the oral history is we want to get that. We don't know what we're going to do with it, but we felt that this was a good time to get an oral history, and we should continue to do it in the future. Okay, that's a good goal, I think. I think that well, you can. I was thinking of various commercial ways you could use it. I think one of the things the organization is going to have to do, any organization has to do, is to define its purpose overall clearly. I was on the board of the, and I don't know whether I can get all the right parts of it, but we were a rivers organization in New England, and our purpose was to help preserve New England's rivers. We have a lot of small rivers back there, as you know. And we spent about 2 or 3 months trying to define just what it was, because we wanted to be conciliatory sometimes, and we wanted to be tough and so forth. Finally, we decided our purpose is that if you come around and touch our rivers, you're going to have the damnedest fight you ever had in your life. And when it started, people, all of us, I mean, not that the other people said this and I said that, people said, God, that's far too bellicose, can't do that. But that's what it boils down to. I mean, I think what it really boils down to, said in the right way, with the canyon, you mess around with this canyon, and we're going to just beat the out of you. We're going to climb your, we're going to climb your clocks. I mean, that's what it comes down to. You're not. That doesn't mean, like a fighter. Fighter doesn't go around swinging his arms all the time. He picks his the time to throw his punches, and I think that's what we're doing here. We're taking the proper time to really slug somebody who comes in and does things to the things that we. There's another thing. This won't sell. And I just say to you guys, I think the other thing we ought to do is we ought to get in back of clean, safe power. And one relatively clean and safe source of power is nuclear. I mean, think what we could do knocking down dams and so forth. It would be terrific. Now, I guess I really believe that. I believe that there are ways of getting rid of nuclear fuel in a way that will not hurt the environment.
The waste, you mean?
The waste, yes, that's right. Because it keeps burning. I think. What is the way you approach it to get rid of everything? It keeps feeding on itself.
I'm not sure.
I'm not either. But I talked with a couple of them. One's conservative and one was a liberal, and they say that the systems in Germany and Switzerland, I think, are very are good systems and can be used with great relative. But that would, that you have to have all your other problems fixed before you take on that one.
Yeah, well then there's population.
That's right.
That's the big one, it seems like.
It's going to be one heck of a mess. One heck of a mess. And I think it's going to get worse in the next few years. I mean, look what's happening. The people from Haiti and parts of Cuba coming into the United States, we can't even keep people out of the country who don't play by our rules. We say, set of rules, fine. You do those things, come on back, or come on over. We'll take a good look at you. But we can't do that. And I think that's really going to hurt. It's going to put strains on our energy sources. And we're going to be burning more of the oils that pollute the atmosphere. I mean, it's not as easy, simple kind of situation. It really ought to be tackled seriously. Now, whether that should be tackled by this organization, that's another question. I'm not so sure.
Well,
So, well, those are about the only words of wisdom I
That
have.
was great. That bit about what you guys did with the rivers in the east. So, do we have? Is that going to be too dark? You got it. Okay. Because I'd almost like to get that again, unless it looks like this is okay. That was wonderful.
What we did, incidentally, what we did after examining ourselves, we decided that we would disband and become a committee of the Appalachian Mountain Club. Most of us were AMC members anyway. Well, as I say, I'm going to be here right until Friday. How many days is that?
Not many. Well, no, this is Friday now. This is the 16th Friday, and we're taking off the 20th, so it must be 16th, 17th. Must be Tuesday.
That's it. We get off on Tuesday.
Yeah,
And today's Friday.
yeah.
So tomorrow we'll probably mess around. Saturday,
Then we'll go around Lava Falls.
Lava Falls. And then we'll probably mess around, relax on Monday, and then head back. Wow, time passes quickly, doesn't it, when you're having fun?
Do you think you'll do more trips? You don't feel like this is your last one, do you?
No, I don't. I think it's my last one. I'd like to run it again in my kayak. That was a lot of fun. Problem is, I lost my roll going down the lower salmon, so I'll have to see whether I can get my roll back. If I can't get my roll back, God,
Yeah.
I ought to be ashamed of myself, number one, but you only have time for so many things.
It seems like you've had a really amazingly rich and varied life, going, through having these adventures with your dad down here, and then World War II and the Navy, and being a big muckety muck there in DC and all that stuff. Where do you put this place, in your life, the canyon? How has this affected you, and where would you put it?
Well, I think it was a very, very important part of my life. It gave me confidence that I could do a number of things, and of significance and of significant difficulty, and that I could then carry them through to other parts of my life with the idea that we can get these things done. Now, one of the things that I think about is, it never occurs to me, or never did occur to me, when I got in a boat, one of these cataract boats working for Norm or for my dad, that anything was going to happen to me. I mean, I checked over the boat, and I knew that I was going to get through that rapid better than anybody, and with the least amount of with the least amount of water in that boat, and that I wouldn't come out, I wouldn't tip over, that I'd just go do it. And it wasn't braggadocio. It was just that almost was an unspoken confidence. Never talked about it with my dad or my mother or anybody else. I just, you just go out there and you turn left and go down the rapid. We've always been outdoor people. Do a lot of skiing and that kind of stuff. So when it came to liking outdoor stuff, heck yes, tell me about that, because we do a lot of that kind of stuff already. And I would put it in with a number of achievements, if that's the right word. The Washington DC thing, it gave me confidence that I could get it done. And again, not braggadocio, but just a simple, quiet sense of confidence.
When you think about this place, when you're far away, when you're home in Boston,
Yeah.
What is it that comes up for you? What part of it do you remember? Or what image comes to mind?
Yeah. Well, I think a couple of things. The kayaking is certainly number one, or is not number one, but it's right up there. Of course, all of these things are up there. The colors of the red in the late afternoon, and then the whole ambience comes to it. I guess it's a general feeling rather than any specific feeling, although I certainly think of times I spent on the beach down in the lower section of the canyon with my dad and somebody else, can't remember who it was, just talking, shooting the breeze, and that was the time when I felt I started to get to know him as a human being. So it's special that way too.
Too dark. I guess we're out of business here on account of darkness. God, I sure thank you for talking to us. That was wonderful.